I'm Rachel, and I'm going to be refuting Justin Aranda's proposition that the consumption of raw milk is a safe alternative to pasteurized milk. So he began his speech with a little bit of a background on raw milk, defining it as milk just straight from a cow. And he further explained that in the 18th century, people consumed a lot of raw milk, and they didn't have any problems. But as technology and society advanced, the pasteurization was created because they started having problems because of it. So in 1987, the FDA required pasteurization for all kinds of milk because of the new worries that came with the raw milk. And then Justin made his major claim that raw milk is safe now for people to consume. But I'm going to refute his claim with my major claim that says the consumption of raw milk can actually be very harmful for its consumers and is not a safe alternative to pasteurized milk. It says, for secondary claim, stated that the safety of raw milk depends on how the cow is raised. So he backed this up by saying if the cow is raised naturally and grass-fed and it's free to roam, the milk is not dangerous at all. But if a cow is raised how it is raised, in high protein soy foods and in a tiny, tiny stall all day, it's also given growth hormones, and this is all the cause of the bacteria in the milk. We should actually be concerned with finding bacteria in raw milk, because according to this article on Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, harmful bacteria and other germs that can make you very, very sick or even kill you are in the raw milk. It's possible to get foodborne illnesses from any different food, but raw milk is actually one of the riskiest of all. A wide variety of germs are often found in milk, include Brucella, E. coli, Listeria, and Salmonella. According to another article on the same website, getting sick from raw milk can mean many days of stomach cramping and vomiting. People who have drank raw milk have developed severe or even life-threatening diseases, including Guillain-Barré syndrome, which can cause paralysis, hemolytic uremic syndrome, which can cause kidney failure, stroke, or even death. Justin's secondary claim stated that the FDA proves that raw milk is safe. He backed this one up by saying that the FDA had originally banned pasteurization in 1987, but in 2009, 29 states were allowed to sell raw milk again, therefore proving that it's safe. In my research, I found that the FDA actually does not permit the sale of raw milk. It advises states not to do so. And it can be sold only in the state where it's purchased. It can't be sold across state lines or internationally, according to an NCSL website. So 31 states allow purchase of raw milk directly. You can either buy it on a farm or at a farmer's market. You can also do a cow share program where people collect funds and then they share a cow together. In some of those same 31 states, 19 of them are allowed to have milk sold at retail stores. So California is one of them. You might see raw milk in the store. But in 12 states in the United States, consumers are not allowed. The sale of raw milk is completely prohibited. Justin also stated that between 1999 and 2010, 9 million consumed raw milk, and there were only 42 illnesses that each year, so that averaged a 0.0005% chance of getting sick from raw milk. But in an article on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention website, I found that from 1993 to 2012, there were actually 1,909 illnesses that were linked to drinking raw milk and 144 hospitalizations. In his third claim, he stated that organic raw milk is a complete food. He backed it up by saying that it contained large amounts of minerals, proteins, good fats, and vitamins. He also said that it was alive with beneficial bacteria that aids in digestion. So raw milk is definitely alive with bacteria, but it's not the good kind. In 1856, this man named Louis Pasteur realized that if he heated up wine to a specific temperature, it would kill the microbe but preserve the wine. So the same procedure was then used later in the dairy industry when tuberculosis was a very large problem and often spread through the contaminated milk. Pasteurization is the process of heating a liquid just to under the boiling point, so it kills all the bacteria, and then it is cooled off and bottled up to be sold. Most of the nutritional benefits from drinking milk are available in the pasteurized milk without the risk of the disease that comes with drinking the raw milk. A question that is often asked is if raw milk has more enzymes and nutrients than the pasteurized milk. The answer, according to an article called Raw Milk Questions and Answers, is that the heating process of pasteurization inactivates some enzymes in the milk, but scientists do not believe that these are important to human health in the first place. Some nutrients are somewhat reduced in pasteurized milk, but the U.S. diet usually has plenty of other sources of these nutrients. An example is vitamin C. That's not the main source of vitamin C for humans in the first place. So, in conclusion, Justin claimed that consuming organic raw milk is a safe alternative to pasteurized milk because it depends on how the cow is raised. The FDA proves that it's safe, and organic raw milk is a complete food. But after some research of my own, I believe that the consumption of raw milk can actually do more harm than good and is riskier to its consumers and is not a safe alternative to pasteurized milk.
Okay, the claims identified, you give us a good background, remind us of what the argument is. You basically have a counterclaim that you're going to be arguing continuously throughout the presentation, and you do come back to it on a regular basis, applying it to the arguments that the advocate presented. I thought that was pretty solid. On the first point, you go right after it immediately by suggesting that the CDC finds that this milk is potentially problematic because of the bacteria that's involved, and lists a variety of nasty things that are likely to happen to you that when you come into contact with raw milk. And it also describes what some of the consequences would be in that particular situation. One of the things that you might want to do, remember, is that you're going to do a little bit more contrast in the argument. You want to compare the thing that you're talking about versus the thing that the advocate's talking about. So they're suggesting that the milk is safe, and in fact that it might have some advantage over pasteurized milk. And when you get to the enzyme issue on the third point, that's, I think, where you do a little bit more comparison. But here's one of the things that you might be talking about. What is the risk of anybody getting any of these illnesses and problems from pasteurized milk versus non-pasteurized milk? And the answer is almost zero. There's no evidence that anybody has had these problems, but people who drink the raw milk do have those problems. Now the only question is how much. He says it's relatively a small amount, and you come back on the second point and say, well, it appears to be substantially more than the advocate presented. So when you're doing your contrast, then it's easy to say, you know, whatever advantage there is, we're going to talk about on that third point, but we definitely know that when it comes to safety issues, that raw milk has bacteria that pasteurized milk doesn't have, that the bacteria cause these particular problems. And despite what the advocate said, it's not 44 cases within 6 years, it's 1,900 cases within a 15-year period, and those 1,900 cases included 144 hospitalizations. So it's a pretty substantial issue that we're talking about there. So I think you've got good information here, and you can make it more effective just by contrasting it a little bit more with what the advocate said. There wasn't anything wrong with what you were saying. I just think the contrast thing is helpful. The argument about the FDA I thought was an interesting one, because your contention is that the FDA has never approved it for sale in the other states. The reason that they can do this is because the FDA primarily gets its authority from interstate commerce, and if you keep it within the states, then the FDA can't really do a lot about those kinds of things. I think that's an interesting point, and that's why some of the states decide to do that. But of course, not all of them do that, and some of them have very strong restrictions on what you can do and how you can access it and those sorts of things. So I think, but that doesn't necessarily prove that the milk is safe, which is the inference that the advocate is making. So I think that that's a reasoning challenge that could be a little bit clearer. On the third point, like I said, I think that you kind of go back to history. We talked about the pasteurization process. That's okay. You kept it relatively brief, but we're back to the issue about what is it that you lose from pasteurization. You lose the bad bacteria. The advocate says there are good bacteria that get lost, but your evidence says that none of the things that lost seem like they're particularly important. Nobody is talking about that. Did the advocate provide any quantifiable comparative advantage from drinking raw milk compared to pasteurized milk? No, they don't have any of that sort of thing. And whatever vitamins do get lost in pasteurized milk, we have plenty of access to other nutrients in other things that we eat, so it's not like people are deficient in these things because they can't have raw milk. That seems to be the comparison that you're making. At the end, I like the summary that you had. I thought that was pretty effective. You need to project your voice a little bit more, but I thought, like I said at the beginning, there's a good summary of what the argument is that you're going to get to, and then at the end, you summarize what your argument was. A little bit more contrast here and there would be helpful. All right, thank you.